I'm 72 years old, and there is something I've been carrying inside me for 3.5 years that I haven't told anyone. Not to my son, not to my sister Carol, and I tell Carol almost everything. Not to Father Dempsey, who I sit with sometimes on Wednesday evenings after the 7 o'clock Mass. Nobody. I don't know if I'm able to say it now, but I'm going to try. Before I go any further, if something about those first few sentences made you stay, I want to ask you to subscribe to this channel. Not because I need the number, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of thing people don't say out loud, ever. And if that matters to you, if you've ever carried something you couldn't name, there's more here. The button is right there, 1 second, and then I'll keep going. My name is Vincent Ferranti. I was born in Youngstown, Ohio, 72 years ago, in a row house on Federal Street that isn't there anymore. They knocked it down when I was already grown. My mother used to tell me I was born during a blizzard, that my father had to drive through 6 inches of snow to get the doctor because a midwife couldn't get through. She told that story like it meant something, like being born in a storm was a sign of something. Maybe she believed it. I grew up in Youngstown, left at 20 to come to Pittsburgh for work. Started in a warehouse on the Strip District. Then I sold office supplies on the road for a company out of Monroeville. Then eventually I went out on my own. A small agency, nothing grand, but I made a life from it, and I kept my family fed. I retired at 66. Since then, I've been here in this apartment in Squirrel Hill, 4th floor, with an elevator that breaks down once a month, and the woman upstairs who walks like she's carrying paving stones. My wife's name was Marlene Kowalski, before we married. I met her at a wedding reception when I was 27, and she was 22. We were both terrible dancers. I remember that clearly. And we started laughing about it at the same time. And after that, we never really separated. We married in 1979. Our son Danny was born in 1982. We lived together 38 years. Marlene died 11 years ago. Cancer. Fast. Less than 8 months from diagnosis to the end. Like a wall falling on you. You don't make peace with it. Not really. Not ever. But you keep going because there's no alternative. Because there's Danny. Because there are grandchildren. Because the morning comes and the day is there, and you have to walk through it. All right. 3.5 years ago, I fell. A stupid thing. Slipped on wet pavement at the beach. We were in August at a rental down in Cape May with Danny and his family. A bad fall, though. I hurt my side. They took me to the emergency room. X-rays. Nothing broken, but badly bruised. At the ER, they noticed some things in my blood work that weren't right. kept me for observation and sent me to a specialist. The specialist was a woman, maybe 45 years old, short hair, wire-rimmed glasses, very precise in the way she spoke. Dr. Vitali was her name. She had me do further tests, called me in for the results. She was sitting on one side of the desk and I was on the other, and at a certain point she asked me if I had children. I said yes. One, Danny, 40 years old. She looked at the results again. She told me there was something she wanted to go over, a condition, something genetic that showed in the blood work, something you're born with, and that based on what she was seeing, I would not have been able to father a child, that it was biologically incompatible with paternity. I sat there in silence. She looked at me, asked if I was all right. I said yes. She asked if I wanted her to explain further. I said no, thank you, not right now, and I walked out. Outside it was a September afternoon, that particular kind of September light that's still warm but tired, like the sun is getting ready to rest. And I sat down on a bench near the parking garage and watched people come and go for I don't know how long. I wasn't crying. I wasn't thinking anything specific. It was like watching television with the sound off. You see the images, but you can't make out what they're saying. Then I got up and went home. Marlene took care of all the paperwork. I never knew anyone like her for that. She had a folder for everything. The mortgage folder, the school expenses folder, Danny's medical records, the insurance folder. Whenever I had a test or a scan, she'd take the sheet, read it, and file it where it belonged. I never read anything. Why would I? She read it. She understood it. She told me if there was something I needed to know. That was how we worked. That evening, sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee, I thought about this. I thought that if there was something about this condition in some old test result, Marlene had read it. Marlene read everything. Marlene was not distracted. She was not careless. She did not lose papers. Marlene was the most thorough person I had ever known. And so I began to think things I did not want to think. The first few days I said nothing to anyone. I kept to my routine. I went to the market on Tuesday morning, had my coffee at the diner on Forbes, saw Danny on Saturday for lunch as usual. I sat at the table with him and his wife Karen and the 3 grandkids, and I ate and I talked and I laughed at something my grandson Tyler said. He's 15 and he thinks he's a comedian. And inside, I was carrying this thing I couldn't even name yet. I couldn't name it because I didn't know yet what it was. It wasn't anger, not yet. It wasn't certainty. It was a kind of very heavy question that I didn't have the courage to finish asking. Then I started looking. I went through the closets, the boxes. Marlene had kept everything. I knew that. but most of her things I hadn't touched since she died. Not for any particular reason, because it was never the time. It's never the time for these things. I found the medical files at the back of the hall closet. Inside a shoebox she had labeled health records in her handwriting. I opened it. There were test results from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, checkups, referrals. I read through them. I don't understand all of it. I'm not a doctor. But at a certain point, I found a very old result. Yellowed paper. The date was 1981, a year before Danny was born. And there was something written on it that matched what Dr. Vitale had told me. A condition. A medical term I didn't recognize but looked up afterward online, and it said what I already thought. Marlene had read that result. It was in her folder, in order, filed with all the others. I put everything back, went to the living room, sat in the armchair I always sit in, the one by the window that looks out onto the street, and watched outside. There was a boy in the yard across the way, kicking a soccer ball against the fence and chasing it back, kicking and chasing. I watched him for a long time. What I felt in the days after that is difficult to describe, because it wasn't one thing. It was many things at once, mixing and changing. There was anger, yes, a big rising anger that came up at night when I couldn't sleep. Anger at Marlene, anger at a woman who was dead. And I know how that sounds. I know it makes no sense to be angry at someone who isn't there anymore. But anger doesn't ask permission. It goes where it wants to go. I kept asking myself how she could have. How a woman like that, a good woman, a woman who had done so many right things in her life, how she could have done something like this. Not told me for 38 years. But then the anger would drain out and something else would be left. Something quieter and heavier, a disorientation. Because I knew Marlene, or I thought I knew her. And Marlene was not a liar. She was not a cold woman, not calculating. She was generous. She remembered everyone's birthdays. When the neighbor across the hall got sick, she brought food over for 2 weeks without being asked. How do you hold those two things at the same time? How do you keep them in the same frame? I still don't know. Not after 3.5 years. I spent a lot of time looking at photographs. Photos of when Danny was small, his first days, his baptism, vacation photos from when he was 6 or 7. I would look at his face, looking for something, looking for whether he resembled me or didn't. And sometimes it seemed like he did, that he had something of me in his nose, in the way he carries his shoulders. And sometimes it seemed like I was inventing it because I wanted to see it. It is a strange thing. looking at a person you have looked at for 40 years and not knowing anymore what you are really looking at. It took me almost 2 years to find the letter. I wasn't looking for it that evening. I was looking for some property tax documents because of a dispute with the city. Going through a drawer in Marlene's nightstand that I had never opened when I found an envelope. A plain white envelope, sealed, with my name written on the outside. Her handwriting, that slightly right-leaning script she'd always had. I set it on the bed, went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, drank it slowly. Then I went back to the bedroom. The envelope was still there. Of course it was. I opened it. 3 pages. 3 pages written close on both sides, in her neat handwriting. Almost no corrections. I won't repeat all of it. I can't. But it said what I already knew, at some level. It said she had found the medical result not long after we married, that she had read it and hadn't understood it first, then understood, and had been alone with it for a long time, not knowing what to do. She said she had thought about telling me and couldn't find a way. She said she was afraid of how I would react, that she knew me, that she knew how much it would hurt me, that she didn't want to see me suffer, that she loved me too much to watch me go through that. She used the word love many times. In those 3 pages, the word love came back often. Then she said she had made a decision. She didn't give many details, only that it had been one time with a person she didn't name, and that it had been the hardest thing she had ever done in her life, and that she had hated herself for it, and that she had never stopped carrying it like a stone. When Danny was born, she wrote, when she held him for the first time, she had looked at me and thought that I was the man most suited to be a father of any man she had ever known. She wrote that I was the man most suited to be a father. She asked for forgiveness. She said she hadn't had the right. She said she owed it to me to tell me and had never been able to. She said she had loved me every day, that part had never been a lie, that the rest of it was a guilt she carried and didn't know how to carry any other way. I sat on the edge of the bed holding those pages for a length of time I couldn't measure. It was dark outside. I don't remember looking at the clock. At some point I got up, folded the pages, put them back in the envelope, and put the envelope back in the nightstand drawer where I keep it still. What I felt was less anger than I expected, mostly a quiet sadness, a particular kind of sadness, because Marlene had been dead for years by the time I read that letter, and I couldn't say anything to her, couldn't ask her anything, couldn't look her in the face, couldn't even be properly angry with her because she wasn't there. There were 3 pages of paper and her right-leaning handwriting and nothing else. I thought that she had hidden the letter there because she wanted me to find it someday after she was gone. She wanted me to know, but couldn't tell me herself. I don't know whether that strikes me as cowardice or as a kind of consideration. Maybe both. Maybe those two things aren't as opposite as they seem. The hardest part is that I still love her. That hasn't changed. I think about her every day. I look at her picture on the dresser. I miss her. I miss her voice. I miss the way she'd sigh when something didn't go the way she'd planned. I miss the pot roast she made, slow cooked on Sunday, with carrots and potatoes, the whole apartment smelling of it by noon. And I've never been able to get it right the same way she did. And alongside all of that, there is this thing I know, that I carry, that has changed something in the way I look at my own life. I don't know how to hold those two things together, but they hold. They don't go away. Danny doesn't know anything. When we see each other on Saturdays, when we eat together, when he calls during the week to tell me how work is going or to ask my advice on something, I answer and we talk and I laugh and I worry about him the way I have always worried. He is my son. I have never questioned that, not even in the darkest moments. Danny is my son. I watched him grow up. I was the one who took him to his first Pirates game. He was 9 years old, and we lost badly, and he cried. And I told him, that's baseball, that's life. You cry and then you come back. I was there when he graduated, there when he married Karen, in the waiting room all 3 times the grandchildren were born. All of that is real. No one can take that from me. But then I think about him, about what he knows and doesn't know, about what he has the right to know. And that's where I get lost. Sometimes I think he has a right to know where he comes from, who his biological father is, the whole story. It's his life, his origins. It concerns him. And other times I think, to what end? To give him an answer I don't have? I don't know who Danny's biological father is. Marlene didn't write a name. I have nothing to give him. I would break something that works without being able to give him anything in return. And then I think that I'm doing exactly what Marlene did, keeping a secret to protect him. And look what that secret did to me when it landed. Look at how the thing works. But it's not the same. Or maybe it is the same. I don't know. There is one thing that weighs on me more than anything, a thing I can't stop thinking about. Before all of this, when I thought of Marlene, I thought of a person I knew well. 38 years together. I knew how she woke up in the morning. I knew what she ordered at a restaurant without looking at the menu. I knew when she was really angry and when she was performing anger. I knew her fears, her regrets, the things that made her laugh, and the things that made her cry. I thought I knew them. Now when I think of her, there is this thing in the middle. This thing she carried alone for 38 years without ever telling me. And I find myself wondering how many other things I didn't know. Not because I've found anything else. I haven't found anything else. But because the certainty cracked. And certainties, once they crack, are hard to seal back up, even if you find nothing new underneath. The floor is the same, but it doesn't sound the same when you walk on it. I'm 72 years old. I don't think about death all day. That's not how it works, at least not for me. But I'm realistic. I know the time left is less than the time past, and I wonder sometimes whether I'll die with this inside me, never having said it to anyone. Whether Danny might find something someday, after I'm gone maybe, and understand on his own the way I understood. Whether that would be worse, I don't have an answer. 3.5 years without an answer, and I don't think I'll find one. But one thing I think I've understood, or maybe I've understood it, is this. Good people do things that hurt you. Love is not a guarantee of anything. It doesn't guarantee truth. It doesn't guarantee that the other person will always do the right thing. Marlene loved me. I know that in a place where doubt doesn't reach. And Marlene did something to me that she shouldn't have done. Both of those things are true. They don't cancel each other out. That's not a conclusion. It's not peace. It's just what I've come to, if I've come to anything, with 72 years, and this thing inside me that I don't know who to tell. Danny called last night. He was in a good mood. Told me that Tyler, my grandson, had gotten a good grade on a math test, and that the family was thinking of coming up to see me next weekend. I said, yes, come. I'll make the pot roast the way you like it. I hung up the phone and sat here for a moment, in this armchair by the window. Then I turned on the television.